I'm your host, Noel McDermott. Got a couple of fantastic guests on this evening, Sarah Gillmore and Emily Stevens, who will be telling us about them and this amazing service that they provide, helping you find friends online, which is fantastic. So we'll be getting to that in just a moment. And just want to remind you, this is a live broadcast if you're listening to it on the equivalent, wherever you are, of Wednesday evening in the UK at 9 p.m. So you can join us live if you wish. You can give me a call on my phone or drop me a WhatsApp message. It's 07506 319 745 +44 if you're coming from outside of the UK. And you can also, this is redundant information, but if you're watching us live streamed, you already know which platform you're on and how to drop messages, and we'll try and pick those messages up. So we go out on YouTube, Facebook, and on Periscope. And if you're sort of listening to this outside of that time, don't call me, because I might be asleep in bed when you do. So call me between 9 and 10 on Wednesdays in the UK, and that's fine. Enough of that, I think. Let's get to our guests and introducing them. And I want to thank you both for coming and bringing that beautiful art with you behind you, which I think is gorgeous. I mean, you said you found it some time ago, did you, Sarah? An art show?
Yes.
It found you, maybe.
Yes, I think it found me. Yeah, because I'm not generally a fan of yellow, but yeah. I just saw it and it felt so uplifting. So I thought, I've got to have it in my home. And yeah, don't regret it.
It's interesting. You may not know this, but you can buy yellow tinted glasses, which are prescribed to reduce depression, oddly enough. And so you can give it to people. And I had Sunflowers is an organisation that deal with suicide. They're great. And they were trying to figure out what their colour scheme was, and they chose yellow. So there's some real sort of important connections with that colour.
Yeah, good energy.
Yeah. I think cars painted yellow are horrible, though. I won't go that far. Staying away from them.
And houses.
And houses, yes, actually. That reminds me, when I was a child, my father did that to our house because we're Irish. So he painted it the colours of the Irish flag, which meant most of the brickwork got painted gold or yellow, and which was ridiculous. Sort of, we just woke up one day and he'd done it, and who knows. Crazy Irish fathers, there you go. So it's lovely to have you both on, and you've got between you 300 million sons, I think, which we'll come to and talk about, and that you're bravely, sort of vaguely managing to kick out the house. So well done. It's a challenge these days to be a parent, because somehow kids are expecting to stay with you till they're 35 or something, and have bought them a house before they go. So that's the way it is. But we'll come on to that. But first of all, I guess I'm just intrigued as to, how the last sort of year, almost 2 years now, has gone of the pandemic, and sort of how you've experienced it, and sort of what's got you through and where you are with it. I don't know, maybe Emily, why don't you tell us about how you've managed all the way through this?
Not bad. I think I've done a pretty good job. My daytime job is a fitness instructor, so I had to give all of that up. But my priority when we went into lockdown, the first one, March 2020, was actually the mental health of my 3 boys. And I remember I set up Cafe 10, which is literally because they'd come to me and say, Mum, what's for breakfast, or what's for lunch, or what's for supper? And I got so fed up with it day 2 that I started Cafe 10, and I planned out all the meals, and I spent literally all day, every day, focusing on how I was going to get food, because I didn't go to any supermarkets. So I used to queue up at 6 o'clock in the morning at the local butcher's, get the meat, go home. This is most unlike me. Anyone who knows me, knead my own bread, make the pizza. I mean, honestly, but I had nothing else to do.
Domestic.
I know. totally unlike me, but for their mental health, they needed me there preparing food and being there. And then in the afternoon, we'd all work out in the garden together.
Yeah.
So we set up a gym in the garden.
It's about routine.
Yeah.
Why was it Cafe 10, by the way?
Because of where I live, number 10.
Oh, yes.
But it was, it was hard work. And I was very conscious about their mental well-being, I guess. And I taught the middle one how to play chess during that time. So we would sit. So the routine was 5 o'clock in the evening, glass of champagne or something in the garden, because of course there was all that wonderful weather.
Yes.
And it was gorgeous, wasn't it? First one, gorgeous. In fact, it was a little bit lovely being at home. And we sat and talking as we played chess. And I found that he really opened up to me. And then we had a little competition with the eldest one, and his girlfriend also lived with us. So it was
Sounds amazing. It sounds like actually you managed to turn it into a situation in which you began to thrive a little bit.
Yeah, but we also were very aware that we were fortunate. I mean, we don't live in a big house, but we do live in Royal Tunbridge Wells. We've got a small garden, and I kept saying to the guys, you know, we're fortunate that we're not in sort of an inner city in a high-rise flat that, you know, with no outside space, you know. And we were very quite humble with it as well, although we did relish in the time we had together. But I was mindful that because I freelance, if I don't work, I don't earn money.
It was really tough for fitness instructors, and also because naturally what a lot of people did was, because there was good sunshine and stuff like that, they started to use local parks and things like that, and then they got banned from doing it in the local parks. In the first sort of stay-at-home order, there was no way of doing it at all.
Well, we couldn't do it at all, because if you remember rightly, you were only allowed out to exercise once a day, weren't you? And I couldn't be seen to be in a group or one-on-one teaching. So actually, I didn't go back to work for 5 months. And even then, even now, even in the gyms now, my classes are reduced. I'm not back to full capacity.
I mean, I sort of, because I was going to a gym at the time, and I gave up the membership like a lot of people did, because you couldn't use it. So, I now have a garden full of weights, sort of merrily rusting away as I use them.
You've not been back out there then?
No, I use them actually quite a lot, and
to keep the door open and.
No, I do actually now work out probably much more, but I've had to completely rearrange the way I do my life. I was talking to my neighbour about it, and sort of we have these sort of things that we would suggest to people about how they could drop exercise into their everyday life, like when you're commuting to work, maybe get off a couple of stops early. And then all that stopped, and then we all just went Michelin style, you know, with sort of doubled in size. And so it's been quite interesting sort of having to rearrange it. I'm guessing something like that has impacted your profession as well, that sort of having to think.
100%. I mean, it's only now people are coming back for one-on-one PT. I've got a private class tomorrow, and that's full. People are wanting to get back, but it's been a really, I mean, it's what, 19 months? It's been tough.
Really?
But we've been busy. We've been busy.
We've had something really great to focus on. That was actually one of the lovely things about it.
Well, yes, I know. And sort of, I think some people have really stepped up and started thinking about the way to do things. So, Sarah, how has it been for you the last 19 months?
Well, I wouldn't say I've got gold stars like Emily has for being the best mother. But I've got 2 boys, and actually,
hang on, where's the bread, Sarah? Come on.
They actually, to give them their due, it was lovely. That first lockdown, actually, I have to say, really enjoyed it, having both boys at home. And then I got them into a good routine of, you know, teaching them how to cook. Well, one of them is better cook than me, actually, the eldest.
Oh, yeah, amazing.
And then the youngest one, I encouraged him to start reading a recipe and making an effort. So we did get some home cooked meals. from both of them, and we did a sort of exercise routine in the afternoon. And actually just, I mean, we were so blessed with that summer. It was gorgeous. But I secretly really relished having that opportunity to just be at home.
Yeah.
Again, we're very lucky, we've got a garden. And I think, you know, for people who, I'd probably class myself as more introvert than extrovert.
Yeah.
So for me, it was actually lovely to be sitting in nature, you know, not having pressure to go anywhere, you know, see anyone necessarily. But I mean, it's interesting this, because I think, you know, people who have been more on the introvert scale now are finding it even harder to get out. And this is where, you know, for Just Good Company, we're sort of really wanting to tune into that and appreciate it, that it's not easy for people.
Did you have to stop doing a lot of things to sort of nest at home? What were you doing already? So Emily had to stop her business, but
yeah, well, and this is the beautiful thing, that I'd actually stopped doing and I stopped doing it only because we had this idea. So I was working as a volunteer stylist actually for a charity in London called SmartWorks, which are fantastic. And they do a lot of good work getting underprivileged women back into the workplace. And the idea is that they provide them work outfits for interview, you know, smart outfits.
Brilliant.
And they get interview tips. And so I was doing that and getting a lot of great feedback and good feelings about doing that. I loved it. And it wasn't just, you know, putting them in outfits, was also giving them a boost really, and giving them a bit of one-to-one and nurturing. And so I really enjoyed that. I got a lot out of it. And
so
then,
what was your background? How did you get into that type of thing? You always been in that sort of field?
Well, I did train as a stylist and a colour consultant actually a few years ago. And I was always more interested in the people than the actual clothes. And I really saw clothes as being a reflection of the person, that the most important thing was putting someone in something they felt was them, really comfortable with, rather than going along with trends or, you know, what was in fashion. So because I've always had an interest in people first and foremost, and I've read lots of, you know, psychology books and books about relationships, I'm just fascinated in everything to do with that. And so for me, it was always about tuning into the human and what makes them them, and therefore putting them in something that reflects who they are, their authentic selves. So my work at SmartWorks allowed me to sort of expand with that. But ultimately, I just felt this real yearning to do more of a people-connected job, I suppose. And I did train as well as a life coach. So I did some life coaching.
Again, sounds very much like a coaching approach from both of you.
Yeah.
Sort of working with individuals on developing plans for their individual strengths and
sort of motivating people and I don't know, giving them a comfort, I suppose, in some way. Both of us sort of on a nurturing level. You know, I mean, Emily's very motivational, the way she, you know, she's teaching, you know.
Does that mean she cracks the whip? Is that a
polite
way of saying she's
spinning class with her? She's told me I should do it. I'm terrified. I
thought that subtext was in there.
Yeah, no, I think I've got multiple personalities. Sarah knows me, the true me, and I'm a pussycat, but you know, I think I put on a show. I call it an act. So when I go in, I'd say to my clients, I'm not here to make friends or keep them, because most of the people that come to my classes turn out to be friends. But and on a PT level, you know, you get to know someone completely inside out. And I think it's the confidence that I have. I pass on to them.
Yeah. So how did you get involved in personal training? Well, What drew you into that?
Oh my gosh. Well, I used to be a fashion designer, pre-children.
Is that originally how you two knew each other, through an
No, we met through
children.
we met through children. So I moved from London to Tunbridge Wells literally 21 years ago.
Wow.
And
You only looked 21, so you were a newborn when.
I know. Yeah. And Sarah was one of the first women I met, and we just clicked.
Oh, okay.
And
That's something called Squeals on Wheels.
Squeals.
I haven't even.
Hilarious.
I mean, it's so not us, but
Very,
you know,
very noisy kiddie environment. Yeah.
but they loved it, didn't they? Our kids loved it.
Yeah.
And then so I gave up my main career, which was fashion design, to move down here. And then I had the children, brought them up, and then I separated from their father. And I thought, well, what am I going to do now? I need to take the children to school, and I want to be there to pick them up. And I can't work, so I can't work 9 to 5. I'd always been interested in fitness and the motivational side of it. My other friend at the time was a PT, and I liked the way that she got the group together, and you felt part of, you know, a something. And so I requalified, and it was hard. I remember putting the boys to bed at 8 o'clock at night, and then sitting with all these files, revising until midnight. You know, coming down in the morning, doing the whole process again. But it turned out to be the most amazing thing.
Good for you. And what was the life coaching that you trained in, Sarah?
It was called Life School, and it was set up by a lady in London, and she basically gave me a whole sort of, I worked through a whole sort of syllabus with coaching with her and other people that she brought on board to, you know, to do case studies that I had to work through online. I mean, it was via Zoom. And
it was NLP based?
It was, yes, it was NLP based, yes. I'm trying to think back now to the actual sort of
I mean, people might be interested in this. I know quite a bit about NLP, and I have a lot of respect for it. It's often used, I think people know it in the context of selling and things like that, and it can be used by various organizations. I think of Landmark as one organization that uses those techniques to, and then there are very famous Americans who use it to sort of turn you up, to get you to turn up. But there's a lot of really fantastic coaching that's happening through NLP. So just take, if you don't mind, just explaining a little bit about it from your perspective, what NLP is and how it works.
Well, I mean, it's very sort of, it's really looking into someone's mindset and, you know, how they're viewing a situation that they're in, and, you know, seeing it from really questioning the situation, and then their emotions that are connected to that. And yeah, I mean, I should have read up on my notes before I came.
Right, don't worry. Your perspective,
but
how you understand it.
It's about, you know, what is the reality of the situation, really, and then looking at how you respond to it. That it's not your, you know, it's you can change how you feel about a situation by seeing it in a different way, from a different perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Nice description. I keep knocking my table. I'm going to get told off by James. You can't edit that out. You can edit out all the other stupid things I do, but not me making the camera wobble. So sorry, James. I mean, what's interesting to me is what's emerging is a picture of two people who are very interested in growth and personal development, and adapt to the reality that you have. Don't sort of make too much of a fuss about it. I'm sure you do in your own time, but sort of then make plans to manage that reality, and how am I going to adapt to it, how am I going to work with it, and how am I going to move on, whilst also maintaining strong relationships with each other, with your kids, and so I mean, it's a very positive, strong story from my perspective. Where did you get that from? Was it just sort of you found that sort of lying around on the street, or was it your family, your parents, or where do you think you got that from?
I think for me it was from my mum.
Right.
You know, she's been, I'm very close to my mum. I have a sister who I'm also very close to, and I like the empowerment that women can have and do have, and don't actually use a lot, I don't think, in the right way. I think there can be an emotional or a physical way you can use your energy and your empowerment, and my mum certainly taught me how to use mine.
Great. What about you, Sarah? What would you say was the genesis of this sort of approach to life for you?
Well, it's definitely been a journey for me, and I wouldn't say that I got anything particularly from my parents.
Right.
I think I was very emotionally self-sufficient, or needed to be, and so therefore I sort of went inward and dug deep and found my own support mechanism and tools to work with and to support myself. I think that's why I read round the subject so much. I'm
always intrigued by why people choose to get up again, sort of want of a better way of saying it, because it's sort of inevitable that life's going to knock us down, isn't it?
I think it's a need, isn't it? You know, if you've got small children, as we both had,
right,
and we've got 3 boys and Sarah too, mine was a maternal need,
right,
to support them. I didn't have any other choice. But now seeing them sort of go off to university and flourish into the actually amazing, you know, I'm credited with, as Sarah is with her boys, you know, wonderful men, grounded, articulate, funny.
Sometimes.
Yeah, well, yeah, we all have our moments, but you know, you take them into a certain context.
Probably more often than me. Probably more often than me. So I always think younger men these days are much more impressive than me when I was that age.
Well,
and young people in general.
Yes.
I mean, I think back to the idiot I was, and I look at young people now and just think, wow, how are you doing that? That's really, like, if we think about Emma sort of winning at 18 years old the Open tennis.
Incredible. Really.
It's just astonishing, isn't it? And then some fat old white bloke having criticised her a few months before that in Wimbledon, and just thinking, well, I come from that.
She had to. She walked off, didn't she, because of her mental health?
Well, who knows? She couldn't breathe, so it might have been psychological, it might have been physical. I don't know. I didn't do the test on her. She says it was physical, but you know, he saw it as an opportunity to stick the boot in. I'm not even going to say his name because it's all clickbait nonsense, isn't it? And then she gets on with her life and comes back and seems very happy about winning. And
well, I think young people, definitely this generation, have become much more resilient in many ways, although there's a lot stacked against them in terms of stresses out there.
Yes.
But they're somehow more self-aware. They've got, you know, I mean, definitely
without a doubt.
Yes, I've seen that.
Really impressive, I think. Really.
Yeah, and also even you know, being boys, where there's a lot of, you know, obviously publicity about boys struggling to talk and about their emotions and how they're feeling, but with their friends, I think they have amazing support networks, because they do lean on each other and they seemingly are open. I mean, I suppose it depends on the boy, but you know, definitely I've seen in one of my sons particularly, he's got great network.
I would agree. That's my experience. I mean, I'm of the generation of guys where all the rules changed as I grew up. and it was all a bit confusing. But now we are at the place where the rules have changed, and this generation of young men, I think, are really, really impressive, and they certainly sort of engage emotionally. They have much better emotional intelligence than I had in my 20s, and less harmful to themselves and more successful.
Yeah.
I know that this is of interest with the company that you set up and the service that you set up, and we are getting there. I don't want you to feel frustrated that I'm not allowing you to just talk about your shiny new project immediately, but I think it's really important people get to know who it is that is offering this, because my impression when I chatted to you, Sarah, was it wasn't just about a quick buck. This is a really thought out service that is trying to provide something that's genuinely needed. And that's why I'd like for people to get to know you in this way, because I think that's really important. To me it is, and that's why I've got you on the show, because it's not some odd dating agency knocking shop weird thing. So it's genuinely well thought out service, I think, and sort of fits a niche. So if you'll bear with me, we'll get to your shiny new toy soon, I promise you, and we can talk as much as you want about it. But I think this is important. I'm intrigued as well that you're mums of boys. And I think that's really important, because it's a challenge, and it's interesting. I don't know where their dads are. I mean, I'm a stepfather, and my boy lives in France with his mom, and I go and see him, and I'm involved in his life, and that's an interesting dynamic. But he's 11 in a few weeks' time. And so he's at that point where at some point his body's going to go, time to stop being a kid, and we'll have to deal with that.
You've got a few years yet.
Yeah, at some point it's going to happen. That's right.
Because mine are 20 and 18, and they're still, need the support.
Yeah. So do you mind talking about being mums of young men, and sort of
to the point where we're not going to embarrass them?
No, not embarrass them. I'm talking about your experience rather than their experience.
Yeah.
We won't even name them, but being mums parenting boys who are into men. So that's an interesting. Do I'm going to say challenge? That's an interesting experience, I think.
Yeah, I actually always thought that I would have girls.
Did you?
I'm a girly girl, really. And I thought I'd be much better suited. But in fact, I'm so happy to have boys. they're lovely. And they love their mums normally, you know. And that's great. And I'm really happy to have had boys. And I just think there's a lot of vulnerability in boys, which you do pick up as a mum. And Emily and I are quite soft about our boys, aren't we, with their vulnerabilities, and also the fact that they're not as vocal as girls, so they don't tell you everything that happens, which can be a real frustration. If you're worried about them, and that you can sense there's something not quite right. And it's a matter of understanding how to get out of them what isn't wrong, what isn't going right.
Yeah.
And it's, so finding the right approach definitely is a challenge with boys, how to get them to open up. Because my sister has a girl, and she's much more vocal and expressive, emotionally expressive. And finds that very easy, and I think that is quite a female trait very often.
Emily, is it a similar story for you, sort of?
I think communication, and I think with my three, I've always been really honest with them, as much as I call it white lies, trying to keep them safe. I haven't and won't tell them everything that's gone on between myself and their father. They don't need to know, because I want them to be grounded. I want them just to love us both, probably equally. And I found that talking to them and keep talking to them, hence me teaching one of them chess over the summer, was a good opportunity to keep him there and hold him there. Otherwise, you know, you ask a question, you know, why are you asking me that? You know, go. Whereas if you're playing a board game, it's, you know, it's your turn to move the pawn, you know, whatever. But I think
really good advice. It's advice I give to families all the time. Don't directly look in the face of your boy if you want to know something.
Yeah.
Go and dig a hole or drive a car or play a game of chess, or you know, and allow it to emerge.
Yeah, and you can get more out of them without them really knowing. But I think also a friend of mine said to me once, her boys are older than ours actually. She said, you've got to let them go and then they'll come back to you. And I didn't know what she meant by that, but it's true. You kind of let them go and find their own, make their own mistakes, or you know, come across problems. You can't sort I mean, as parents or mums, I think as parents, actually, you want to try and sort out everything for your children, but actually you can't. It's about the mistakes and learning how
to manage.
Yeah, and how you come out of those mistakes makes the person.
It's lovely to hear you both talk in such grounded and realistic ways about parenting. So, you know, over anxious parenting is as destructive as neglectful parenting. There's, you know, we have to be somewhere in between 70-30 around those things.
But I think that comes with age, because I do think 10 years ago I was a very different parent. You know, I was caught up in all the 11+ thing and private education and all of that. Now, if I could look back at my old self, I'd say that doesn't matter. None of that matters. Actually, what matters is that the boys are happy and confident.
Yeah.
You know, I would do things probably a bit differently if I could do them all again.
Yeah, I remember reading some philosopher or other and saying, you know, that we just borrow our children. You know, they're lent to us, and then we and they're their own people. And then there's that poet Khalil Gibran, I think his name is, and he talks about them being arrows, like arrows that you shoot from the bow, and you let them go. And you know, let them out into the world, and they are their own people. They've got their own souls,
which is really odd, isn't it? Because they've been with you for 18 to 20 years. And I said to the middle one, who's just gone off to university, you know, this is a big adjustment for me too, not just you. You're not the only one going through this, you know.
Every time I
keep wandering around.
It's all right. You're allowed to cry. It's feelings are all right. I'm one of those unusual guys of my age. I can deal with it. You know, it's a sort of occupational hazard in what I do. Is people start having feelings when I ask questions. So I mean, it's fascinating stuff, I think. All of this, and it sort of speaks to who you are as people. I think there's something interesting about changes that are taking place within how we form relationships at the moment, and there's something about the pandemic which I think maybe it's jumped us forward by 10 years. In the last 19 months in the way we do things, and changes that probably were going to happen anyway, I think, but would have taken a bit longer to do. And one of them is the embedding of this online world, this online experience. So we've had this online relationship forming stuff through dating apps and stuff like that for a while, but I mean, they are what they are, but they're sort of very specifically targeted. Although I think there is one, I'm trying to remember which one, there is one that tries to sell itself as a friendship app as well. I can't remember which one it is, but certainly in my clinical experience, and it is more true of guys than it is of women, trying to, let me go backwards. One of the most important and healthiest decisions anybody can make as a social animal, which is all of us, is to have a good network of people around us, friends, family, colleagues, etc. It's what we're designed to be part of, you know. And that's what I think that philosophical statement about our kids don't belong to us. They are with us for a while, and our job is to equip them so they become part of the world. And that's really where they belong. And then they choose to come back. So it's not like we lose them, but if we try and hold on to them too much, we'll just destroy them, because the fundamentals of love is to let people go. And that's really what it is. Love equips our children to explore the world and find out who they are and make their mark. And you know, that's the natural, normal way. But as social animals, we're fundamentally programmed. We need a range of relationships around us. Living in isolation will literally make us mad.
Well, it's been proven that it can actually be detrimental to your health as well. I mean, the statistics.
There's a thing called the Glasgow effect, which is, Glasgow is a lovely place, and anybody in Glasgow, I love Glasgow, I lived in there, don't get me wrong, but it is an interesting public health conundrum, because Glasgow has worse outcomes than anywhere else in the UK, even with comparable places. And one of the things it has worse outcomes in, and not so much these days because the work has been done, but guys there tend to die 5 to 10 years earlier than men elsewhere in the UK. And even when you compare like with like in terms of inner city areas and all that sort of stuff. And one of the prime reasons is because they're alone.
Yeah.
They don't have any friends. That's it. And so the cohort of men who die earlier, so when we say they tend to die earlier, what it means is there's a group of people, guys who do, which then bring down the mortality stats for all men. And that group, that cohort that die sooner, are alone, and they spend significant decades alone with no friends and all that sort of stuff. And that seems to be the defining factor. So you're absolutely right. There is lots of evidence now that if you don't have an appropriate social network around you, you'll die younger, you're more likely to get cancer, you're more likely to get a whole host of outcomes. So it's a serious problem. It's not just it would be nice to hug trees type of problem. It's there are hard health outcomes and hard sort of problems in terms of life outcomes. So, which is why I'm very interested in your project. So tell me first about the sort of genesis of your current service and how that came about and how people might access it. And then we can talk more around it, because I know some people are going to be listening going, a dating friendship app, can't people just go out to the cafe? Well, no, they can't. And we need to accept that realities. But tell me how you came to the conclusion that this was needed. I'd be interested in the story, the genesis of it.
Well, it did actually start, and this was just the seed that was sown, really. When we were sort of bemoaning, we both happened to be single at the time, and doing the online dating thing, and just feeling very disillusioned by it, really.
Isn't it?
The lack of authenticity and transparency, and then.
And it's also, I think, at my age, like 50 plus, I was trying to sell myself as younger than 54. That's what I am, and it's just, I can't do the game. I can't kid myself that
it is like a game, and that's the thing, and a lot of pressure associated with it as well. But also we had scenarios where we might meet someone and enjoy their company, but just not feel a sort of romantic spark. And we thought, wouldn't it be lovely just to be able to meet that person with no pressure, just to have lunch on a Sunday, or go for a walk, or meet for a cup of coffee or anything like that. And sort of, then we thought, that must be something that a lot of people are feeling. And in fact, since we even started this whole idea, which was actually, well, it happened to be Valentine's in 2020. That's where the idea was generated. One evening we were all with a bunch of single girlfriends all bemoaning the same thing about online dating, and we sort of took that idea and thought we can really expand this out, because it's more than just single people who feel this. I mean, it's and it doesn't even have to be people with no friends, because not everyone we know is on the same schedule, or they don't all enjoy doing exactly what we want to do, and sort of having interests in common. That's where we thought we'd sort of turn the online dating thing on its head, that it was going to be about what people wanted to do and have a one-off companion where they didn't have to take that any further than just the event or the activity. So there was no pressure to follow up with that person, all handled in a very nice, friendly way, with no obligation. But, also opening that possibility of that person maybe becoming a friend or even a romantic partner. Although it's really not gender specific, because it's not romantic. It's not about romance. Yep. So it could be either gender, any gender. And for anything that you want to do, but start with the activity rather than, on dating sites, it's all about scrolling through faces. And we decided that it was going to be scrolling through activities or outings.
Oh, right. That's really, really clever. That's really clever. I've not been on the site. I must register and go and make some friends. I find it interesting, like with the dating stuff, that it's almost seen as a failure when you have a nice time with somebody, but you don't fancy them. That's what it comes down to. Yeah. But how is that a failure, that you've had a nice evening with somebody that's pleasant, whose company you enjoy, you might even want again? I mean, that's bizarre, because that's actually what we're programmed to do as social animals.
But the thing is, when you apply on a dating website, you're going and you've got just a tiny picture and 3 words, "Hi, my name's Steve." You're supposed to form a relationship or a friendship or whatever from that momentary thing. And if you don't form that from that momentary thing, it is going to impact on you. Either he doesn't like you, or she doesn't like you, or there's no chemistry. Whereas with Just Good Company, you're coming to it with no expectation. You're coming to it, oh, there's a trip to the V&A. Great, I can go with a girl or a boy or whomever, and things will...
There's no agenda.
No.
There's no other agenda.
No.
Than that, to enjoy the outing.
And therefore there's no disappointment. I've had a great afternoon. Great. Would you like to meet again? Because I enjoyed your company. Or that was great, and good luck.
And find someone else for something that person might not want to
do.
Another time. But I think also we wanted that to encourage, it should encourage being authentic, being your authentic self. Because obviously in the dating scenario, you're sort of setting out your stall, you're trying to attract a mate. Yeah. And that throws a whole new dimension on it. Whereas, with Just Good Company, you don't have to pretend to be anything but yourself, because actually, this is about what you want to do.
Yeah.
And you're not trying to, attract someone in some way. It's just to have fun doing an activity or an.
And we all know the best.
Tell me why one-to-one rather than setting up group stuff, because there's things like there are, I forget what they're called, but you can sign up for emails about group activities and stuff.
Yes, like that. Exactly. Yes.
But why one-to-one? Because it seems it's almost like it's quite high risk, isn't it? Still, to say to people, well, you're going to join. I mean, I love the idea of joining for activities. I always suggest to people that that's the best way to get to know somebody. It's a shame, like the story about your son with the playing chess. If you go full on straight at somebody, right, we're going to get to know each other and be really interesting. It just too much. Whereas you go, oh, you like playing chess, I like playing chess. And then you gradually get to know somebody and relax over a shared activity. It's a stroke of genius. I mean, it's exactly right. But why one-to-one rather than set up yet another, here we go on a group climb together on sort of some Welsh mountain somewhere?
Well, I mean, first of all, we felt that because there are group meeting situations out there, websites where you can meet people in a group. So they do exist. And the thing that we felt really was that, that's really like finding a needle in a haystack, potentially trying to find a like-minded person in that scenario. But speaking for myself personally, and then obviously Emily can say what she feels about it, but I think naturally as a person, I'm much more a one-to-one person. I get a lot more out of that scenario than I do within a group scenario. And also I think when you are potentially more towards the introvert than the extrovert, that's also a more comfortable scenario for you, a one-to-one than a group.
Absolutely.
And I think that's one of the nice things about Just Good Company, that you have all that pressure of trying to manage in a group, particularly if you're not really extrovert, that it's nice just to have that one-to-one time with someone that you know already, because you'd have read their profile, because on Just Good Company we do encourage a nice in-depth profile, and in fact, you have to write so many words before you can upload a photograph anyway, but someone's already got a good sense of who you are, what you're interested in, and so you're starting off on quite a good footing anyway with that. So then you choose that person to go on this particular outing with. So you sort of got a good sense of them anyway.
Yeah.
But I just think, well, for me personally, that was one of the big attractions, rather than doing a group gathering thing.
How about you, Emily? What was attracting you to the one-to-one idea?
Well, I think the whole Just Good Company process developed. And it developed during the pandemic, when we became more aware of people divorcing, separating. There was bereavement. And we both have friends who've gone through all sorts of things, but these people didn't want to be in a big group. They wanted to, and they didn't want to date. Obviously, they're not ready to, but because they were either found themselves single for whatever reason, they still wanted to go for a dog walk, or they still want to go and have a cup of tea with that one-on-one person, where they, like Sarah said, they can be heard, they can be seen, and not necessarily want to be in a big group. And in fact, we, for so long, for 19 months, haven't been encouraged to be in a big group. It's been very difficult. It still is very difficult. I was up at the V&A at the weekend and had to book my slot to go and see an exhibition. You can't, if you're in a big group of 20 people, how's that going to work? You can't go and do anything.
But also, obviously now, after the pandemic, the idea of being in a group for a lot of people is scary. It's still scary. It's not comfort. It's not a comfort level.
No, and it's going to get scary again, because we know the winter will see a rise in cases, etc. So the Great British Press will sort of do its fear-mongering job, as it always does, and so we'll get more anxious about it. I mean, there's objective fears out there. There were certainly at the first stay-at-home orders. There were really objective fears, because we didn't really know what we're dealing with. I suppose what's interesting me is because clinically, if I think clinically about it, that we get different things from groups to one-to-one, obviously. And I'm thinking about it in attachment terms, which is a word we use for producing nice hormones in our brains in therapy. And attachment is this process, which I think in people who don't have their heads up their arse like me call it love, and love is can be looked at neurologically as a series of hormones that are produced that make us feel good about each other, and we feel emotionally bonded. And I'm going to take the word love out of it now, because it tends to get associated with romantic love and sex and intimate partnerships and the love between a parent and child, but actually there's a more mundane, everyday form of love, form of attachment that happens between people, that principally happens one-to-one in the dyad, as we call it. And so I'm intrigued that sort of there are services like yours growing, because I think it's absolutely necessary, because we lack, like, intimacy isn't a dramatic thing. Intimacy is small moments of shared interest with somebody that happen almost by accident. And so a good example of intimacy I give when I'm doing couples work is that there's this thing which is called moving towards. So say one person in the couple is doing the washing up and they notice a robin in the garden, and they say, oh, look, a robin in the garden. The other person will echo them and say, oh, yes, a robin in the garden, isn't that pretty? And that's it. But that type of intimate connection is profound in human relationships. And that's what really intimate relationships are made up of, is those small moments like that of shared bonding, and things like eye contact and stuff like that. And actually, more intimacy happens through physical, non-sexual physical contact than anything else. It's fundamental. Sexual physical contact is something very, very different. It produces a different set of hormones. But intimacy, one-to-one friendship is really important. Now, there is lots of evidence at the moment that one of the big problems that we have in society is loneliness.
Yeah, huge.
Yeah, it's its own epidemic, isn't it?
Yes, it's huge at the moment. And loneliness isn't cured by putting people in groups. Loneliness is cured by allowing people to have intimate moments with another human being.
It's more quality relationship.
Really is. But it's also those small things. It's not big dramatic stuff, you know, and that's why I'm really interested in your service. And I mean, it is a service, people pay for it, but I'm intrigued as to what it says, because I think that, you know, there is a genuine need for it. And I think you're probably ahead of the curve in that sense. So I'm very intrigued as to your own process. And what's interesting as well for me is that you've been very much guided by yourselves as human beings and what you want.
Yeah.
You know, what you would like to see and what's been
what we saw was missing.
Yeah.
And in fact, a lot of dating apps now are sort of, you know, catching on to the fact that a lot of people just want platonic relationships. And, you know, there are a couple of dating apps that have tried to make provision for that and styled themselves as friendship apps, but they're still working from the same premise of a dating app. So it starts with what do you look like, you know, how you look on the screen, and a little bit about you, but it's still the same premise as a dating app. So that's where we're different. And also we're very in terms of, you know, someone's profile, if someone's vulnerable about being out there online to view, for, you know, everyone to view, we've made it a much more discreet service in that way, that really people can sign up and their profiles are completely hidden until they want to express an interest in an outing. And then
how lovely. That's great. I think that's really clever. Yeah.
So there's no vulnerability until you feel comfortable and you're ready, because you really like the sound of that theatre trip, or you really like the sound of that walk along the Thames, or whatever it is.
So tell me, because people, I guess, are going to ask this, and I, you know, Sarah and I talked about it. Tell me about how it is made safe for people, because obviously there are some vulnerabilities in terms of meeting total strangers. And do you give people advice on how to do it safely and sort of help people protect themselves and stuff like that?
Well, we've got we've got a section on the website where it's called FAQs, where we've said, if you're in this scenario, you can do this or don't do that. But we really feel that because we believe our website is authentic in its look and its appearance and its message, that the people coming to it will be the same. It'll rub off. So like Sarah's already said, you know, it's not about putting, hi, I'm Emily, you know, 50 and that's it. There's a little bit more to me, about me, and you can see that on the website. You know, once people put an outing on the board, on a note, we have a notice board, we hope that there'll be the courteous and politeness of meeting that person and taking it forward. You know, like any website, once those two individuals meet, we're not responsible for what happens, but we do guide them. Yeah, we guide them about, don't give. I mean, the beauty of it also is that it can all be done through the website.
Yes.
So
the messaging service.
Yeah, it's a messaging service. So you don't have to give your number. You don't have to give anything. It can all be done online. You can meet that person for a lovely walk, and then that's it. And they've got no other way of contacting you.
It's up to them if they want to exchange numbers, and that's only if they feel comfortable. But there's also, you know, and we hope that this won't have to be necessary, but just to make people feel extra safe, that if they're made to feel uncomfortable in any way, and using the site, you know, if someone messages something they feel uncomfortable about, then there is a block thing as well, so that they can block somebody. We're hoping that will never be needed, but you know, you don't know, and some people's levels of comfort are different. So you know, we've had to sort of acknowledge that and allow for that.
And we've also, I mean, Sarah and I before the show talked about this, particularly within the context of supporting guys in forming friendships. And I think the idea of activity-based stuff is absolutely the right way to go. And we spent some time talking about your own sons, and you know that from your own experience of your own boys, who are men now, my apologies if they're listening, don't hit me. The young men in your life, that activities are the way to form relationships with young guys. Partly cultural, partly physiological. We don't have time to go into why it's partly physiological, but let's just say with the cultural sort of pressures, and certainly, you know, as a clinician, you know, it's interesting for me that it's something that I would definitely point people at, in terms of people I'm working with who maybe have a smaller circle than they need or could have, and who have issues, like you say, around group-based stuff. There's lots of group-based stuff, but this one-to-one space with no pressure to form anything, but to go and do something that you enjoy, is, I think, absolutely crucial. I think it's a brilliant idea that you've got. I really do. I'm really excited to have come across you, to be honest.
Thank you. Yeah, we also feel that because there's a lot of working from home now, you know, that cuts down social life for a lot of men, let alone women. You know, I mean, it's the same for everybody.
Well, it's you know, the pandemic took away every single avenue that most men have for socializing. That was it. That's gone overnight. It was gone. But also, I do think your service represents a shift that was happening anyway, and this loneliness was already there, and somehow it's the services are emerging, and I would say your service, Just Good Company, as part of that. So what's the web address? It's called reallygoodidea.com.
It's called justgoodcompany.co.uk.
Great.
And you, and we're on Instagram and Facebook, justgoodcompany.jgc. And actually, people can join up for free at the moment.
Well, right, I'm on.
Yeah, I mean, we want it to be a great user experience, and we're pioneering. We've got pioneering users on now, which we like to call them, and we want to grow our database as much as we can to make it a really great user experience for everybody who wants to be on there. So
thanks. I think it's a totally brilliant idea. I'm really excited. I hope, genuinely want it really successful. It's really important stuff that you're doing. We have run out of time, unfortunately. I told you the hour would go quickly.
Yeah.
Everybody starts off on this show going, an hour, I don't talk about it. And then by the end of it going, is it finished? I've got X, Y, and Z.
We've got plenty to say.
That's right. It's been a real pleasure to get to know you both. Real pleasure. And I'm sort of imagine that the service that you offer reflects who you are as people, and therefore it's a great service. And I would encourage people to reach out to you. We're going to have to finish. You two stay there, and while I say goodbye to everybody else, it's lovely to have everybody here again this week. And I almost then fleetingly remember do the guests next week, but it's gone out of my head. So there you go. I'm rubbish at that stuff. See you all next week. It's been wonderful to have Sarah and Emily with us this week, and I hope you all have a great week in between. Bye bye.